And good evening, Growlers fans, and welcome back to the season finale of Growler Hour. I am your host, Growlers play-by-play voice, Chris Ballard. Happy to have you aboard again here as we wrap up what's been a crazy season of television and of hockey, I suppose. We'll get to all kinds of thank yous. I'm going to gush about all of you all a little later on, but for now, we have a very special guest that I am super excited to get to chat with. You know him as the assistant general manager of your Toronto Maple Leafs, the general manager of the Toronto Marlies. Please welcome to the program, Laurence Gilman. Laurence, thanks so much for doing this with us here today. Great to see you. And I guess kind of how have you been? Sum up the last few weeks. Surely a very busy couple of weeks.
Well, it has. Initially we had a lot of work to do, sort of sorting out what the issues were with the players. And I mean, at first waiting to see what was going to happen. Would there be any kind of resumption of play? Once it was determined that in all likelihood there wasn't going to be resumption for both the Growlers season and the Marley season in the American Hockey League, we then conducted exit interviews for pretty much all the players, but for a small group that are going to serve as the depth players that the Leafs will draw upon when they resume play and enter the bubble later on.
Crazy that this is the conversation we're having, even not something we would be expecting to have talked about when we last saw each other at the end of the Kelly Cup Finals, and we'll get to that. But I kind of want to kick off our conversation today, Laurence, with a bit of context, maybe a little bit of a primer. So we've seen you around Mile One Center a handful of times. Obviously, the Growlers and the Maple Leafs and the Marlies have grown a really nice relationship here. But I'd like to hear in your own words how you feel. What is your role in terms of on the Growlers side of things? And maybe I'm already convoluting myself here, but if you could just kind of try and explain for us your role and how it is specifically toward the Growlers, and we'll start there.
Well, it's funny. People ask me, to describe what I do, like such as this instance, and it's hard to describe because there's a lot of things that go on. And I wear, as I like to say, I wear many different hats. As it relates to the minor league program and our development program, I serve as the overseer of our entire development program, which includes the Marlies, the Growlers, and our player development staff, which interfaces with both teams, the players from both groups. So that involves obviously managing the Marlies, which at any given time we have 25 players and we have a half a dozen coaches, trainers, and staff. And then at the same time, the Growlers fall under that umbrella. So it involves overseeing, managing our coaching staff there, John Snowden, Daryl Williams, our training staff, our players. I'm very fortunate. I have Mike Dixon that I work with, our director of minor league operations, who is a jack of all trades, and I like to describe him as a Swiss Army knife. So that, what's encompassed in all that is, supporting everybody. I mean, that's what managers do, right? You support the coaching staff, you support the off-ice staff, support the players in whatever their needs are, whether that's to give them a lift at some time when they're not feeling that they see daylight. Sometimes it's to give them a push when we think that they can give more. It's a fascinating part of my job and something I enjoy very much. But then there's the aspect of the Toronto Maple Leafs. As assistant general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, I work for Kyle Dubas, who is the general manager of the team. He's also closer to my children's age than my age. Notwithstanding that fact, he's an old soul. And, when he brought me in after he got hired, he said that the reason that I look to you, or the reason I chose you here, is that you have a wealth of experience. You've been in the league for 20 years. You've seen all kinds of different things. You understand analytics. You understand how a minor league team works. And he said, I'm going to need guidance. And I often tell people, if you're of a certain vintage and you're a Godfather fan, I kind of serve the role as Tom Hagen in our hockey operations department. And they often refer to me as the consigliere at times.
I love it. That's so perfect. You touched on it already, and the underlying theme of our conversation will be development. You kind of summed it up yourself as kind of being in charge of the whole development system. Speak to that a little more. What is development? Say you're looking at the Joe Duzaks and the Justin Brazos. What is development? What do you want to see out of these guys in particular? Obviously, you're trying to round them into American Hockey League, full timers and upward and onward from there. But what are we looking to get for these guys when we're talking about development? Is it extra ice? Is it working on skating? Is it teaching the systems? Is it all? Is it nothing? Kind of how do you put it together? Sum up development. What are we looking for?
Well, first of all, it's a multifaceted answer for that. But to begin with, one merely needs to look at the composition of the roster of the Toronto Maple Leafs, particularly with respect to our forward group. We have 4 players in John Tavares, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, and Austin Matthews, who are collectively making almost half of our salary cap, which means it puts tremendous pressure on us to have a pipeline of cost-efficient players that are coming into the system. And I think this past year, if I'm not mistaken, I think there were 13 members of the Leafs that had come through our development program and played for the Marlies, or played in our ECHL, in the case of Mason Marchman, who had played in for our ECHL affiliate in Orlando, predating the Growlers. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure upon us to continue to develop players and get them through the system, because quite frankly, it is cheaper, more cost efficient to develop players in your own system than to go find them and find replacement players in the free agent market. So to that end, what development is, and players come to us from different places. Some are drafted, some come via trades, some are free agents. Joe Duzak's a good example. But they all come to us with a unique set of skills that's unique to them. And it's incumbent upon us to identify exactly where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are, and then come up with an individualized plan for each player so that we can make them strong in areas in which they're weak. And the goal, obviously, is for players that start with the Growlers, and we've talked about this before, we use what we call a baseball model, where they all start, in our minds, now there will be exceptions, but they all start at the ECHL level with the Growlers, and as they apply their trade and become more proficient, they move up and become Marlies, and then as they continue to apply their trade, hopefully they move up and become Toronto Maple Leafs. And a good example for your audience would be Hudson Elenick and Christian Rubens, who were 2 young players who came in as rookies, worked very hard on aspects of their game, worked very hard with members of our player development staff, most notably Scott Pellerin and Stefan Robida, amongst others, and just flourished in that first year, the inaugural year with the Growlers, such that they both played, were major contributors to the Growlers winning the Kelly Cup, and graduated this past year to play for the Marlies all year. And it continued to develop, and we've re-signed both of them for next season. In fact, Christian Rubens has now graduated to the point where he has an NHL SPC. Both these players started with AHL two-way contracts, went down to the Growlers, and in Christian Rubens' case, we've seen enough where we think that he's worthy of investing in NHL SPC. And that's not something teams do a lot, because you're only capped at 50 contracts, and 50 contracts may seem like a lot, but it's amazing how quickly you get there. And our job is to invest and nourish and identify, what the issues are, get them as good as possible, as fast as possible, and continue to support them so that they one day make it to the National Hockey League.
So let's keep that going. Let's talk about the relationship between the Marlies and Maple Leafs and the Growlers. Obviously, at least for us here on the Rock, the results on the ice would lead one to believe that this relationship has been a fruitful one so far. I would like you to tell me that the Maple Leafs and the Marlies would agree that this is a relationship that's seemingly able to work for both sides here.
Well, it's obviously been very good. I mean, we won a championship in our first year together. And in many ways, as our second season was unfolding, there were aspects of this team that we thought were even better than the team that we had before. And it was an interesting year for our player development program because we sustained a great number of injuries. You know, I always say that the Toronto Marlies are susceptible to losing players due to injuries and illness that occur at two teams, right? Losing from the Leafs, you know, Leafs players go down, they're the pipeline of talent, or their own players go down. And in the Growlers case, the Growlers are susceptible to the loss of players due to what happens on three different teams, because you have the Leafs and the Marlies and then the Growlers. Now, you know, in our case, this past year, we had so many injuries at the NHL level, and at various times, at one point in time, I think we had four of the Marlies defensemen playing for the Leafs, which necessitated, you know, having to bring up a player like Mac Hollowell or Joe Duzak, who started their year in Newfoundland and rapidly developed and earned the right to go up and play. So it's instances like those that sort of personify what we are trying to do, and it's a testament to the success that the people that are working at this, and by that I mean the John Snowdens, the Darryl Williams, the Scott Pellerins, if you will, and the players themselves. I think they have to, as I've said to a number of these players when we were in the recruiting process, we're going to provide you the resources that can enable you to get to the next level, whatever level that's going to be, but no one's going to drag you there. You have to put the work in yourself. And, you know, using Rubens and Elenek as examples, that clearly these guys put the effort in, and same to be said with Duzak and Hollowell. They put the effort in and they're moving up the food chain, and that's part of a healthy development program. And obviously you can't do that unless you have a very good relationship. And, you know, we're fortunate to have the operators that we have with Dean McDonald and Glenn Stanford and Trevor Murphy and the whole operation in Newfoundland. It's been an excellent relationship for us, that's for sure.
And you alluded to it, the Kelly Cup Championship in the inaugural season. You were out on the ice as it all unfolded with the cup over your head, celebrating along with us. I mean, kind of sum up your experience in seeing the Growlers come away with the title in the inaugural season. I mean, that's Hollywood movie level stuff.
Well, you know, the best memory I have of that was about 3 hours before Game 6. I was sitting in my hotel room at the Delta on my bed, and I was getting, tying my shoes or whatever. And I was thinking to myself, excluding the years that I had been out of work, because I've been fired twice in this business, I think that year was my 21st year at professional hockey. And every year there are 3 championships to win, right? There's a Stanley Cup, there's a Calder Cup, and there's a Kelly Cup.
That's right. And
going into that, like that afternoon, I was sitting on my bed, and I was thinking, I'm 0-62. Like, if we win this one tonight, I'm going to break the schneid, and I'm going to become a champion at some level. And I was so jacked up about it. And when we won, I mean, I had been with the team from the moment the Marlies were eliminated. So I had been through, a couple of rounds of the playoffs with them. And I was as invested as anybody. And when we finally won, like, I never forget being on the ice and lifting that trophy. It was like an awesome experience. And my son has on his screensaver for his iPhone, there's a picture that the Newfoundland Growlers posted on Instagram of the players popping champagne in the dressing room. And if you look very closely in that picture, you will see a middle-aged hockey executive in the back, smiling with champagne, with a bottle of champagne.
And I think actually we may have dug up some footage from the locker room that shows your jubilation in that moment. But I'm also curious again, toward the development model, what do you think winning does for guys in terms of development? Because, I mean, win or lose, guys are going to continue to develop. But what is it about winning that you might think, does it add anything to a player's development?
Well, we believe that you develop better in a winning culture. And there is no question that when you win something, you gain confidence. And confidence is a huge thing that hockey players or any athlete needs to have in order to continue to move through the food chain. And again, using, let's say, Elenek and Rubens, like those two guys, they went through that march to the Kelly Cup. They learned what it takes to win a championship. They learned what hard work has to go in, how it's a process that you need to stick with and be diligent with respect to. And, you also learn how worthwhile it is. Like all that hard effort and all that practice time, the time that you work on your skating or you're working on, if you're Christian Rubens and you're working on your pivoting, mundane drills. Now they know what the payoff is. And it only gets sweeter as you move down the line. So we think winning, and the other, well, we think there's no substitute to winning, and you develop better in a winning environment, and you hope to do more of it.
Hey, certainly. I'm on board for that. Certainly might have to have a vocal doctor on retainer if we keep bringing in high-scoring forwards like we have the last few years. It kind of leads me to my next point. Obviously, this is going to be a broad generalization, but the Growlers have been largely, obviously, impacted by the American Hockey League and NHL contracted players who signed. That's kind of been the MO the first two seasons. The fans have gotten used to that. For the sake of the fans, is that going to be the MO, I suppose, moving forward in terms of the relationship between the Marlies and the Growlers? I know the coaching staff here has done a great job in being that developmental rung. Can the fans maybe expect to see, whenever we do start again, some more Marlies and Leafs guys down here to begin that pro career? We're not moving too far away from that model that's worked?
Well, our intent, as we run our development program, our intent is that players that are going to be prospects for us, in most instances, will commence their careers with the Newfoundland Growlers. That's where they're all going to start. How long they're there is going to be dependent upon them. So there's always going to be players that are our prospects on NHL contracts that are playing for the Growlers.
Wow.
These last number of years, we've had a number of guys that we also signed, the Scott Poolies and the Brady Fergusons of the world that we felt could develop, and they were worth taking a flyer on, and we're going to have a measure of those players going forward, I would assume. I don't know what it's going to look like when we resume playing. There's a lot of uncertainty, but we still have to develop players. We still have the same issues that we have at the Toronto Maple Leafs level. And I see that the way I see us operating, there will always be players on NHL contract or AHL two-way contracted players that are going to be on the Growlers.
Certainly our fans will be happy to hear about that. And if you could, I'd like you to take me through the process behind one of those players who ended up playing for the Growlers this season, only because his story and his journey I personally found very peculiar and interesting, and that's the story of goaltender Parker Gahagen. For those who don't know Parker's full backstory, he hadn't played the year before. He was serving his country, with West Point in the military, started the season in the SPHL, with Evansville, earned his opportunity with the Growlers, earned his opportunity with the Marlies, signed to an American Hockey League contract in January. So with a guy like Gahagen, can you take us through a bit of the process, and how did he become on your radar? Because he was a guest on this very show, I believe it was just last week, and he himself said at the beginning of the year, it's a tough sell, no matter how much talent he has, and he certainly proved that he has it. Not a lot of guys, especially at the American Hockey League level, were willing to give him that chance. What did we see in Parker Gahagen that allowed him to earn that chance and to find success?
Well, we spend a lot of time scouring talent across North America. We have, and with respect to goaltenders, that's no different. We have Brian DeCord, who works in our organization, scouting goaltenders. We have, our own goaltenders, John Elkin, who coaches the Marlies, Steve Briere. I mean, we are constantly looking at goaltenders. And the thing about goalies is there's not a lot of jobs. There's only 2 jobs per team. So oftentimes with goaltenders, there's a big game of musical chairs that occurs. And it's tough for guys to find jobs. In the case of Parker Gahagan, he's been on our radar. He was on our radar last year. We watched him. We knew where he was. We knew where he had been the year before. And he had been through San Jose's system. And we knew he was a good goaltender. And he played, for a program that doesn't have a lot of notoriety at West Point. But he was athletic and he had a terrific mindset. And, at times early on, we had some goaltending issues, both at the NHL level, also at the Marlies level. And we had some goaltending issues at the Growlers level. We weren't very happy with some of our performance. We think Max Zhukov suffered and struggled to perform. And it was important for us to backstop that position. And we went out and got Angus Redmond and Parker Gahagan, and they flourished. I mean, Parker Gahagan, I think, finished the year with a .939 save percentage. He was just outstanding. And, he earned the right to come up and play for us. And we took a look at him and thought, you know what? It's a prudent business move for us to put him on an AHL SPC. And, he did his role, that's for sure. And I'm not sure what's going to happen with him going forward. He's currently serving his military obligation. So we're going to see, but he was all like, it's a good example of, investing the time, knowing the players that are out there, having the staff that are looking at these people so that when we needed to make a decision, we were able to say, hey, this guy's out here, let's bring him in and see how he does. And in his case, he held up his end of the bargain.
Well, he sure did. And a lot of that credit certainly can be attributed to the Growlers coaching staff. I know we alluded to John Snowden and Daryl Williams here, but if you could speak a little more to their impact, especially John Snowden coming into a pretty tough situation for his first ever head coaching gig, having to take over for Ryan Clough mid-season in an inaugural season to boot, ultimately winning that. A lot of credit goes to John and the coaching staff. I mean, what more can we say about the guys at the helm down here?
Well, we put John Snowden in a very, very difficult position. And it's, obviously it was unfortunate when Ryan wasn't able to continue coaching. And we knew, we were also really fortunate. I had a prior relationship with Daryl Williams from our time together. We worked together at the Vancouver Canucks. He was on our coaching staff. And, we knew that he was there. And I called him and told him, we need your help. We need some help here if you can come in. And I think the combination of the two, like he brought a lot of experience and helped, John, because everybody needs experience on their staff. Every young coach needs experience on their staff. And I think that the two of them blended well together, and they had a great rapport with our players, and everything just was a seamless fit.
I feel so early to ask already about next season, but I mean, here we are, nothing to look forward to but that. How far along in the process, I suppose, are we, say, compared to a normal off season in terms of building a roster for, say, the Marlies and down the line for the Growlers?
Well, we had signed a number of players before the pandemic hit, or right initially as the pandemic hit, and one of them being Noel Hoffenmeyer, defenseman that we anticipate will start with the Growlers. But as things evolved, and yet there's been some uncertainty as to when the seasons would begin, both for the American League and for the ECHL, we have, for the most part, put the brakes on signing anyone for the time being. We just signed Elenek, but we had been in negotiation with him, and we felt it was appropriate to see that negotiation through. So I would say that right now we're sort of halfway there. Our people are still looking at players. When we have some definitive answers with respect to when these seasons are going to commence, we're going to then target target specific players and specific needs that we have and go from there. But it's been, as I said to Kyle Dubas, what's going through here, this wasn't in the GM handbook or the assistant GM handbook, as the case may be. So it's a different world for us to be navigating right now.
No, certainly. Well, that being said, I'm not trying to pry too much, but what do the next couple of weeks now look like, say for you? What are you anticipating coming down the pipe, even just the next couple of weeks?
Well, what we have going on in Toronto is that we have our players in phase 2. We have a number of them at our facility. They are getting ready voluntarily, working out, skating in small groups, in pods, as the case may be. As of now, training camp is tentatively set to start on July 10th, where we will have all our players back. I think that ultimately the league is looking at 28 players and unlimited goaltenders. Okay. So we're going to have a training camp, which could be as long as 3 weeks, who knows. And then eventually, once they name the hub cities, I think the league is looking to get started sometime in the end of July. And we'll get started, get the play-in series against Columbus and go from there.
Already looking forward to that. I know a lot of fans here already have dusted off their blue and white, looking forward to that. I'd like to touch on again, if we could, what's your impression of the province of Newfoundland and Labrador and the thirst for Maple Leafs hockey here? And I know you've been here a handful of times. What do you make of the Leafs Nation fan base here in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador?
Well, the reason we chose Newfoundland and the Growlers as a partner, I mean, first and foremost, there's a rich hockey history in the province of Newfoundland and particularly in the city of St. John's. There's also, a history of the Toronto Maple Leafs that existed for a long time and a very successful relationship with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the St. John's Maple Leafs. And again, knowing Glenn Stanford as well as we did, and his reputation as an operator, it was a no-brainer. And I spent a lot of time in St. John's, and it's an amazing thing. When I walk around the streets and I walk around that place, I thoroughly love coming to St. John's.
Awesome.
And I see Maple Leaf attire everywhere I go. And when I'm walking through the arena, people stop me and want to talk Leafs hockey and what's happening with the team and what do we think is happening with the Growlers. And it's just been a great experience for us, for our staff, for the players we've assigned there, and for me personally. I love my time spent there. I'm a regular restaurant goer, and St. John's is a good spot if you want to get good food.
Oh, you certainly got that right. Looking forward now again into next season, I have to ask, so because throughout the ECHL, the Growlers and their Kelly Cup victory may have, dare I say, ruffled some feathers. The new kids on the block came in with this new development model assisted by their NHL partner, and these new kids went out and won the whole darn thing. I'm just curious, in your hockey circles, have you felt any blowback's not the right word, but has it made its way into the greater hockey conversation that look what the Leafs and the Growlers and the Marlies have done? That's not only creating a development pipeline, but helping the ECHL club win championships. Have you had to have a couple of conversations like that?
Well, after we won the championship, I attended the ECHL Board of Governors meeting in Las Vegas with Dean McDonald and Glenn Stanford, and I addressed our player development model. And I explained to the Board of Governors how we operate. And I really reiterated that which I said on this show just 20 minutes ago, which is we're not doing this to try and win. I mean, we want to try and win, but the end result, the end game for us is to develop hockey players. And we think this league is a pretty darn good league that's come a long, long way from what it used to be 10, 20 years ago. And we're here to stay. And the question really isn't why are the Leafs operating in this baseball model where we're sending our players to start at the ECHL. The question really should be, why aren't the other teams? And, from our perspective, we think it's a fertile ground to develop players. And we've seen the results. Mason Marshman is a very good example. Again, Christian Rubens, we have guys that have come through here that have played NHL games, and in Marchman's case was used as an asset to garner another player. We got Dennis Malgin because of him. We think the investment is well served, and it's interesting. After addressing the ECHL Board of Governors, I had to answer some tough questions. But the result of it is I've had a number of people, my contemporaries, who have said to me they're going to invest in a model that's similar. Maybe not to the extent that we are, but they're looking at the results that we've had, and they're gonna emulate it. And you know what they say, that imitation is the most sincere form of flattery.
We'll take that any way we can get it. Laurence, before we let you go here, I mean, aside from hockey, hopefully has this pandemic situation at least allowed you to spend a little downtime, at home, with the family, or diving into your hobbies? At least have you found some time to enjoy? Are we binging anything? Kind of take me outside the rink.
Well, I one of the things that I committed to myself about when this pandemic started was that there was no reason that I wasn't going to return to work in the best shape that I could be in my life.
Good for you.
And I have dedicated myself to fitness. I work out every day with weights. I bought a bike, which I spent about 2 hours on driving through Toronto today. And one of the things that I've done is I love cooking, and I've spent a lot of time. I live right by the St. Lawrence Market in Toronto, which is the oldest food market in North America. It's a wonderful place to get fresh produce and food. And I've been cooking up a storm, and I have binge watched a number of things. One of the most interesting things I watched was a show on Netflix called The Devil Next Door, which was about a 65-year-old immigrant from Poland who moved to Cleveland after the war, and worked at the Ford factory in Cleveland. And then in the mid-'80s, the United States government determined that he was, his name was John Demjanjuk, and the U.S. government determined that, or felt that he was Ivan the Terrible, who ran the gas chambers at Treblinka.
Oh my goodness.
And it's a fascinating show. That's 4 or 5 episodes. He was extradited to Israel, put on trial.
Wow.
Very, very interesting. And I've watched my fair share of other things like, Ray Donovan, and I like Fauda, which is an Israeli production about the political, geopolitical climate between Israel and the Palestinians, and watched a whole bunch of stuff. It's been good.
It has been good for that. I'll certainly agree with you there. Laurence Gilman, the Assistant General Manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs and General Manager of the Toronto Marlies. Laurence, thank you so much again for doing this with us this evening. All the best, into the off-season or pre-season, whatever we want to call this at this point, and best of luck to the Maple Leafs. You have a whole province behind you.
Well, thank you, Chris. We get a lot of support in St. John's and in Newfoundland, and it goes a long way with our players, our staff, and it's a very good thing.
And we'll be right back with one of them. Colt Conrad is here. Stick around. Growler Hour. We'll be right back.
guys, Chris Ballard here, the Growlers. Join me every friggin' Saturday. The Growler Hour is going to be deadly.
And welcome back to Growler Hour. Many thanks to our first guest, Laurence Gilman, for joining us here this evening. And we're going to roll right into another very special guest, rookie sensation for your Newfoundland Growlers. Please welcome Colt Conrad. Colt, thanks for doing this tonight. How have you been?
Of course, and I've been doing well. Just kind of working on the family farm and doing what I can to stay ready for hockey.
I hear you. I'm coming back to that farm. So you're clearly at home in Manitoba, in St. Alphonse. That's what your Elite Prospects page tells me where you're from. Is that where the family homestead is?
Yes, sir. Just outside. It's about a half a kilometer east of the town, so it's not too far away, but far enough.
And if I recall conversations with you throughout the season, this is not a very large place. What's the approximate population?
I think it's like 16 or 20 people, somewhere around there.
Wow. And how many of those are your family? I only ask that because this is one of my favorite moments from this season. So when we went on the Florida road trip, obviously your mother, who is a big fan of yours and of the broadcast, introduced herself. She was super happy to be on this trip. So I remember this distinctly. We were in Jacksonville, and I was chatting with your mom after the game, and she said, "Oh, we have a big crew back home are tuned into the game." I said, "Okay, no problem. Give me a list, and I'll shout everybody out." I love doing that on the broadcast. Well, it turns out I almost missed a full period of hockey trying to read out everybody she listed. Obviously, you have a big family and a big support group. I mean, pump your family's tires here a little bit. Now, how many of them do make up that population in your home?
Well, I don't actually count my family or my relatives in that.
Okay.
Because then it probably doubles. But the farm that we have and the ranch that we call ourselves is Lucky 7 Ranch. So there's 7 people in our family, my mom, my dad, and then I have an oldest sister and then an older brother. I'm the middle child, and I have 2 younger sisters. And then people that you're probably calling out were their significant others, my grandma and my grandpa. But between our family and we have actually 2 other Conrad families, all within a 2-kilometer radius of St. Alphonse. That quickly adds up to
a whole lot of shout outs.
Yeah, a lot more than one would think. I think there's about 13 or closer to 15 just Conrads surrounding St. Alphonse. So I don't really count that in as the population.
No, I guess not. Do you have like a role on the farm, and what kind of farm is it?
It's horse farm. Okay. We got a bunch of horses, and cool. It's not really any role. I just kind of, when I'm done with my hockey stuff, I go outside, and my dad usually has a few things for me to do, and then I try and get them done. Usually, well, not usually, but sometimes it doesn't happen, and it just carries on to the next day.
So what kind of hockey stuff then have you been up to of late?
Well, I've been working out pretty much every day, every weekday. I actually bought a home gym because we're so far out of kind of civilization that it's about an hour's away from any gym or hockey arena. So I bought my own home gym, and we kind of set it up in the riding arena. And I've been using that pretty much every day of the week. And then every Tuesday and Thursday, I've been skating in Winnipeg.
Okay.
So it's kind of opened up the last month, and that's what I've been doing. And then outside of workout, I just kind of shoot pucks, do whatever, and then, just kind of have fun.
So I have to ask, we never gave our fans the opportunity to get to know you really all that well, say through a podcast episode, because our season did get cut a little short here. But I have to ask, so you essentially, your hometown is between Brandon and Winnipeg. I'm curious what NHL team you would have cheered for growing up, because I would imagine when you were growing up, your formative days as a hockey fan, the Jets were a memory. They weren't back in existence yet. Who did you like growing up?
I wasn't more of a team guy. I was more of a players. I like to look and watch hockey to kind of just learn tricks, I guess, and see what I can do to kind of build into my game. So I wouldn't necessarily have a diehard team or whatever. But my brother, he's big Toronto Maple Leafs fan. And because he was such big on the Leafs, I kind of was just tagging along, you know, big brother, 4 years older than me, big hockey player himself. We just kind of cheer, and my big sister, we kind of just all kind of followed after one another, you know. And my brother still goes on about how the Leafs are gonna beat Boston, and it's gonna be the best day of his life when that happens in playoffs. And so he's just kind of waiting for them to win the Stanley Cup again.
Hey, I'm excited for it too. Don't get me wrong. Let's talk a bit about, I want to take you back to your college days. Ended up in what was an ECHL city in Kalamazoo, Michigan at Western Michigan University. How the heck did you end up there?
Coach Murray, he's a Manitoba born and raised. And he kind of just followed me along since I was young. And, you know, he helped me actually get to Shattuck St. Mary's, the high school that I finished up with in Minnesota. And he coached there, I think it was 99, 2000. And then he obviously made the jump to NHL in the 2000s. And then when he decided college hockey was the road, he decided on Western Michigan, and that's kind of how it started. He brought me in when he was coaching Western Michigan to Shattuck St. Mary's, and he's just been a kind of a resource and I don't really even know, just resource for my young career, and helped me along the way.
Well, he sure did, and I'm sure he had a big part of another big moment in your career I'll get to a little later on. But I do have to ask you then, I lost my spot here. Did you get a sense at all for the ECHL and what that was like in an ECHL town? Like, did you ever go to a Kalamazoo Wings game? I know obviously you guys would have been playing at a lot of the same times. You had your own thing plus schoolwork, but did you get a sense at all, or was that kind of not where your head was at the time?
Not really. Like you said, we were always playing and practicing and going to school. Took up a lot of our time. And then we'd have certain events with the school and just kind of show face here and there. But you would have buddies and classmates and whatnot go to the KZoo games and just kind of chatter about the experience they had. And we went to a Grand Rapids Griffins game after my sophomore year, because one of our classmates actually signed with Chicago, and then he was playing up in Grand Rapids, so we just went up there, watched. And then one of my classmates after our senior year signed with KZoo, and I was going to head to a game, and I actually signed my contract and headed out on the Friday that I was going to go to the game and watch him play. So that was too bad, but it would have been nice.
That would have been cool. Would that have been Kyle Blaney?
That signed with KZoo?
Yeah.
No, that would have Jade McMullen.
Okay. Blaney played in KZoo, but anyway, now I'm just trying to test my own hockey knowledge here. Yeah. Do you have a favorite college moment? I mean, you played 4 years. You had 4 great years. Do you have a favorite moment?
There's a couple. I can't really narrow it down, but there was one game we were down quite a, I want to say like 2 or 3 goals to the nationally ranked number 1 team in Denver, and they were at Lawson, which is the Western Michigan Ice Arena, and in the third period, we scored 4 goals in, I want to say 6 minutes or something to end up winning the game. And then it was just, and if you ever been to a Western Michigan game or even just look it up on YouTube, our student section takes up about half the rink, and it's called the Lost and Lunatics. And they are absolutely wild. It's a smaller rink, and they just get loud. And when you score a goal, even against like number one, just scoring 1 goal, they get loud. And then you end up scoring 4 goals in back-to-back fashion, and they're just deafening.
Did you like playing in Kalamazoo? It was always one of my favorite places to travel in the ECHL, maybe because it was like, I always thought it was a pretty good beer town. Straight up. Did you like Kalamazoo?
Yeah, I loved it. It was a great town, great hockey town. Like you said, they got a East Coast team, and then they got the Broncos, and they love to support. And when you go out to the community, they know who you are, and lots of questions. And kids always come up to you if you're at a grocery store wearing a Broncos shirt or something. They come. Some guys, like I've been to it was my junior year. We were doing really well at the time, and I had one trip. I had 5 people come up. Oh, great game last weekend! Like, ooh, really exciting. Just like kind of being in the college town, but also hockey town. It was really just a great mix.
Now I've got to ask. It was late 2018 when you were named to Team Canada's roster for the Spengler Cup over Christmas in Davos, Switzerland. This is a throwback to earlier. I have the feeling that Andy Murray had something to do with that as well, because I was Googling around. And I think he actually has the nickname Mr. Spengler Cup, something to that effect. Am I right on?
Yeah, he for sure helped out with that. It was kind of taken by surprise when I was told. It was actually kind of a crazy story, because you mentioned about one of my favorite moments, but it was last games before Christmas break, and apparently Coach Murray had found out that I had been called to the team on the Wednesday, but we played Friday, Saturday, like most college hockey teams do. And we were playing, again, the number 1 ranked team at the time in Minnesota Duluth. They were on their way to being back-to-back champions, national, and they were at Lawson. And the first game Friday night, it was a real back and forth game. I think it was like 2-2 or something. And I ended up scoring the game winner with 9 seconds left in the game. And once again, the crowd went bonkers and just crazy atmosphere. And then Saturday night, we had another back and forth game, just hard hitting, just 2 teams that like to grind it out. And we ended up winning a shootout in the shootout with Hugh McGinn getting the only goal. So, and it was after that game, I was driving back to my place, about halfway back, and I get a call from Andy Murray. He goes, "Hey, Colt, where are you?" I go, "Just driving back to my place, coach." Like, "Why? What's up?" He goes, "You need to come back here right away." I go, "Okay." And I hang up the phone, and in my head, I'm just thinking about everything that I've done wrong, anything that I could have done wrong, just immediately went bad. I was scared. I was just nervous, overthinking. I get back to the rink. I'm walking in. I'm like, oh no, like this is not going to be good. And I walk in. He says to the coach's room, all the coaches are there. I walk in. I go, "Hey, coach." And he goes, "Have a seat." So I sit down, and he's just building it up for sure. He's laughing to himself. And he goes, "So I got some news for you." He didn't say good or bad. And I go, "Oh, yeah?" He goes, "Yeah. Do you watch the Spengler Cup at home during Christmas break?" I go, "Sometimes, yeah." Like,
I've seen it.
Yeah, like I turn on me and my dad will watch that, and then the World Juniors. He goes, "Well, you're not going to be watching it if you're playing in it." And then I'm like, so that's better news than bad news. Everything kind of just left my body, and it was a pretty exciting time.
No kidding. So, I mean, so clearly it wasn't on your radar then at all.
No clue, not a clue. And
you were expecting to go home for Christmas.
Yeah. And well, he told my dad too, before he told me. And my dad called me Wednesday night. I'm like, this is kind of weird. He never calls me until after our games or whatever. He just lets me be and lets me focus on games. And he was talking to me about the Spangler Cup and whatnot. And I'm like, it was just a weird conversation, just something that never happens. And I'm like looking back, he almost let it slip for sure, but it was pretty funny.
No kidding. Talk about that experience getting over there and getting to play in that tournament, wear the maple leaf on your chest. I mean, that's got to be awesome.
Yeah, it was a blast right from, the get-go. They did a great job setting us up and, bringing us over, and it's just anticipation the whole way. You finally get there, you're kind of in shock about how nice everything is. The town's beautiful. It's just like a resort town. And when that tournament's on, everything's about that tournament, like the whole town, bunch of Switzerland people will come travel all over just to come watch the tournament because it's the biggest professional hockey tournament out there or something. Yeah. Where it's got actual professional teams from Sweden, Finland, all over, and they come in and then play, and then Canada's got their own team. So it was really exciting. And like you said, the maple leaf on the chest, it's just, it doesn't matter what time in your career or with who it is, like the team, it's always just a great moment. And, your family, friends are watching back home, and you're like, before my first game, I woke up from my pregame nap. I'm like, oh man, like I know people are watching because I was people who were watching the game, it's just like, it's a different kind of experience, and it was pretty surreal.
Tell me about the rink over there, because I remember seeing this thing on TV and stuff. It looks like this gorgeous old wooden rink. Like, yeah. Is it as it looks on TV?
Yeah, it's like, in my head, it's better.
Cool.
Just because the whole experience was amazing. In my head, it's like perfect wood. The whole rink's wood, and it's kind of shaped to just bring up the ceiling, and
absolutely gorgeous. Look it up if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's an amazing rink, and it's well kept, and everything about that is just, it's great.
And did you get to go around Switzerland at all? Or I know it's a pretty short tournament, you're pretty locked in, but did you get a chance to see it? Because I know Davos is supposed to be this beautiful city.
Yeah, definitely. We had a few days off, and we definitely capitalized on it. We weren't allowed to go skiing or snowboarding or anything, but yeah, there's a ski lift that brings you up this mountain, and you can overlook the city. You can look behind you at the mountain range. It's just the whole town. Like, even if you're just going to travel, I definitely would recommend Davos in late December for New Year's. It's just a great time.
It's on my list. Maybe we'll end up there some year. Maybe the Growlers should put a team in there. That'd be something.
Yeah.
It wasn't long after that you ended up inking that first pro deal with the Toronto Marlies and finishing the season with them. Even got into a playoff game there too. What was it like, I guess, signing that first pro deal and getting to play your first games?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much what anyone would expect it to be. It's just a moment you've been thinking about your whole life, playing hockey, just wondering if it's ever going to come, or, like when, where, with who. Just, it was like, I can still recall everything that's happened, and
take us through it. What was the moment? Who called who? How did it happen?
It was just kind of my advisor, and he just said, "Yeah, we have a done deal. Let's set you up with some numbers." And I'm pretty sure Laurence gave me a call, and Coach Keefe gave me a call. Awesome. And that was during the evening. And the next morning, I went over to the hockey rink, and I asked our head office, Lynn Rost, and she could print some papers out for me. Printed the contract out. I signed it, and she helped me fax it on up. And 2 days later, I was on my plane.
Unbelievable. And you started your first full professional season here with us last season. I know you said all the expectation about signing the first pro deal. Were you surprised that you started the year maybe in Newfoundland? I'm sure you very quickly realized that this was a good spot to land, but were you surprised and even maybe disappointed? I'm sure it wasn't in your plans.
Yeah, I mean, you sign an AHL contract, you're hoping to play in the AHL. You know, I wasn't disappointed. I know what type of player I am, and I was coming to play hockey. It didn't matter for who or where at. So when I got to Newfoundland, I was a little disappointed. You know, they sent you down. Who wouldn't be? But that lasted maybe the plane ride, and it's a hockey game's a hockey game. You know, you got to play. And the first game we ended up not doing so hot, but the home games after that kind of led up to a good thing.
Well, we're getting into them. What was the? I'm going to take it a couple days before that. What was your vibe? Okay, you get the news, you're coming to Newfoundland. What then? I can only assume the first thing you had to do is Google where the hell you're going.
Well, no, not really. You get taught where every province and city is when you're young, and I just kind of remembered. And Leafs training camp was also in Newfoundland, so I was there for that, and I kind of got the I guess the vibe of the town. And
what was your first impression? Because this is a pretty unique spot.
Well, my first impression was it's wet, because I think we got one sunny day the whole week. And the next impression was how nice the people were. You know, they were waiting around to get the bigger players' autographs, and they weren't mean about it, or
not at all.
They didn't cause us any trouble. They respected our privacy, and if the guys wanted to give them an autograph, they were beyond ecstatic. So, and then you would talk to some of the locals, and it was just, yeah, these are great people.
No, certainly a good place to be. Tell me about your first Growlers game. You alluded to it a little earlier. It was, the game started out really well. We had the banner raising, I think a 4-1 lead at some point, but kind of sum up your first Growler game, because that's a lot of sensory overload for one day. Yeah,
it was, to us, it was our first game of the year, and we were just excited to be playing for something that actually had an outcome that meant something. But then we got into the banner raising, and you've seen your teammates, and you've been with them for a couple of weeks now, and you're just happy for them and kind of taking it all in, thinking, yeah, this could be us next year. And then you get into your first game, and the crowd was great. The game was great, and it was just a fun time.
What do you remember about the game? Because like you said, it was back and forth, tons of goals. Exciting for the fans, maybe less so for you guys. What do you remember about the game in general?
Well, I remember Coach being happy with us at times, saying real good things, and then, something happened, and it maybe wasn't such good things. But it was just, the thing was the crowd and the fan base, and it was pretty much packed in there, and it was loud, so that was pretty special.
Great environment to play in for sure. Were you comfortable adjusting to pro, or the pro level, I guess, right away? The reason I asked, you had 3 back-to-back multi-point games to start your ECHL career with us. You seemingly fit in right away, but I'm curious if you actually felt that.
Yeah, I felt like I fit in quite well, but there's also moments in the game where you're questioning what's going on and why it's going on, because it's completely different game than college hockey, and it's kind of just in your head a little bit, and there's things, you come back to the bench, coach is giving you some advice, the players who've been there giving you some advice, and you just kind of take it and you run with it. And, everybody was pretty lenient when you messed up, and that kind of faded away as the season went along, and you just kind of found your role and stuck to it.
Talk a bit about you. I'm locking right in on your first 3 games here. 2 assists on game 1, 2 assists in the first win of the season in game 2. And then in your 3rd game of the season, not only did you score your first ECHL goal, but in your 3rd game, you broke the team record for points in a game, a goal and 4 assists with 5 points. I'm sure you didn't know that at the time, but what do you remember about that? I'm all over the place here. Take me through your goal, because I remember it was a snipe. Do you remember your first Growler goal?
Yeah, I sure do. It was just kind of one of those things we had talked about between me, the D-man, and Brazzy. It just came up over the top and came down to me. And I remember thinking, I hope Justy remembers what we talked about. And I just shot it. And sure enough, that big body, the goalie's looking one way, Justy's taking away the short side, he takes away, and just, I mean, it ended up being a snipe, but I'm pretty sure I had a good quarter of the net to shoot at. So that I just wanted to make sure it found its way in, because I'd missed some opportunities before.
Did it feel like, this is a stupid question, did you feel like you were in the middle of a hot game? Was that one of those nights where it's like, oh man, everything's going well? Or was it one of those nights where at the end of the night, you're like, I had 5 points tonight? Which one?
It was kind of a mix. I mean, we were winning by pretty decent amount. So when that happens, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, we can kind of just, it's not a good thing, but we take our foot off the gas a little bit. It happens to every team. You know, you're up by a big lead.
The game was in the bag.
Yeah. Even then, like, just things were happening, you know, like the one goal, I just, you know, I won the face off right back, and it just went in the net after that. And that's, I think it was a second assist, and it just managed to find its way in the net after. And then another one, I tipped the puck in the corner. Like, I tipped the puck on net, hit the goalie's shoulder, bounced into the corner. And then the D-man blindly swatted the puck, and it just went right to, I want to say Marcus Power. I forget who it went to, but right on the tape and in the net. Like, it's just one of those nights where things are working out. And then at the end of the night, it's Zach O'Brien. He's like, you got 5 points tonight? I go, I don't know, maybe. I just remember being on the ice for 5 or 6 goals, and I'm just like, yeah, maybe.
Not too shabby. And I mean, you just mentioned a bunch of your teammates, Marcus and Zach, and talk about the team in general. I mean, you guys had a young team with a handful of Newfoundlanders on it, and ended up being one of the most dynamic teams in the ECHL. I mean, what did you make of the group of guys that was the Growlers this season? I mean, we had a lot of fun. Yeah,
it was one of the most bonded teams I've ever been a part of, and I fully believe that's why we were doing so well. There wasn't a selfish guy on that team. True. From start to finish. There's guys were pulling their weight. In practice, we worked hard. You know, we held guys accountable. I just remember thinking in one practice, I'm not going to say with who or when in the season, I just remember thinking, oh, these guys are really kind of going at it. I don't know what it's going to be like in the locker room after, like, whatever. And we're all just walking back, and eventually the 2 guys are sitting in the stalls, and one of them just cracks a joke about the other guy, and the other one just cracks a joke right back. Like, we know we everything's not personal, you know, and things happen, you roll with it. And at the end of the day, we're going to be working towards the same goal. And the guys just got along so well, and the veterans kind of took over and kind of led us and showed us the path, and, you know, just kind of brought us together instead of having little cliques along the way.
Well, and it certainly worked out. What did you make of the local guys on the team? Because it's not every team you go to where you can expect there to be 3 or 4 guys from that town. Not to mention the fact that St. John's and Newfoundland and Labrador in general is a pretty unique place. What did you make of all 4 of you guys are from here? That's a little weird. What did you make of Mel and Obi and Marcus and even Adam Party?
Yeah, those guys are great. You know, it's like you're playing for your hometown team. Like that's awesome. You know, like you can only imagine what it's like. You grow as a little kid. Like I was growing up thinking like, wow, I would love to be on the men's league team, just because it's kind of what goes on, and you know,
It's
like
what was there for you.
yeah, and like at the time you're 6 years old, you're like, wow, these guys can really play, and that can only be, you know, the feeling times 1,000 for those guys. And
Absolutely.
and it'd be like I was talking about earlier about us bonding, like those guys, how easy would it be just to kind of go home and hang out with their own buddies and kind of not include us or whatever. And that was complete opposite. You know, they would invite us over, they would do everything with us, and you know, if they had some buddies, they would bring their buddies to us or us to their buddies. Like it was just a great group of guys, and I can't say enough good things about Mel, OB, Marcus, and for like pretty much everybody on the team.
No, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Is it too much of a stretch to say that maybe the highlight of the season, as far as the Growlers were concerned, was that 19-game home winning streak? How does that sit on you now that the dust is settled and we actually get to talk?
Yeah, I mean, without the season finishing up and seeing what was going to take place, you know, that's definitely right up there. I mean, how many teams can even say they've come close to that? And like, I don't know, it's just one of those things that you're halfway through and you don't even realize what's going on, because there's away games that, you know, you've let slip away. At one point we had 12-game win streak, just home away.
11, I think. Yeah, real close to it.
Yeah, and eventually, you know, you get to like, there's like 15, 16, or 17 at home, and then all the news and media kind of brought it to light, and then players were thinking about it, joking about it. But like to us, we had every confident player in the world playing on our team that we were just going to win every game. Doesn't matter if it was home or away.
Wow.
We fully expected to win the game, and then if we didn't, even in regulation, and we let it slip to overtime, we weren't the happiest players. You know we could what we could do, and when we hit 19, yeah, it was kind of up in the air for the 19th game, and you're thinking about it, and then after the game, that's it. We're done with it. We can move past it. Let's go. And we were gearing up for
night. So we locked it down, and then hey. But you know what? I mean, I'll ask you this: Have you made amends? Have you come to terms with the end of the season yet? Are you harboring any frustration or resentment, knowing that we didn't really get a chance to finish what could have been another really special year?
Yes and no. Like when you think about it, it's upsetting when you realize how good of a team we had and the things that we could have done. But at the same time, you know, it's kind of one of those situations that is never really going to happen again. And it's just kind of the luck of the draw, I guess. And just something that still feels surreal and kind of feels like,
right,
okay, it's unfinished, let's go. And kind of, but that's not going to happen. So we just you have to get over it and move on and get ready for next season.
No, that's really all you can do. And I want you to take me back to the last day of the season, because this is a memory that for me really sticks out in my mind, because Snowy was texting me every 10 minutes. All right, let's push the bus back, leaving for Kalamazoo. We'll get to that. Push the bus back an hour, push the bus back an hour. And everyone was sitting around waiting, but we kind of dreaded and knew it. And little did we know we'd be on the plane a few hours later, flying home. Our year was done. Take me through your experience on that day, because I'm sure that was a trip you were looking forward to, heading back to your old college town.
Yeah, I had a lot of buddies coming to the game, just people I knew, even just saying they were going to be there. And yeah, we were like 15 minutes away from getting on the bus for the first time, and everybody's got their travel clothes on and we're ready to go. And then it's okay, hold on a little bit. We're not sure yet what's going on. And it was just back and forth all day. And like you said, it was kind of but the guys were just together and hanging out. And then when we found out the news, it was an upsetting time. We didn't find out our season was canceled the same day, but
Right.
we found out that it's going to be put on hold at least for a little bit. And that was enough to bug some guys. And of course, like, you're gearing up to play a game tomorrow and you don't really get to.
That's what I mean, because we saw a lot of different emotions. Some guys were straight up angry. Like,
Yeah.
I remember that. And rightfully so. I mean, it's certainly a frustrating time. But, I mean, now that the dust from all that is settled and you look back on your year, are you happy with what you were able to accomplish this year? You had a great year down here, made some great strides in your development. Are you satisfied with the year you had?
For the most part, yeah. I got a couple injuries that kind of took me out of the game for a little while, and I was real upset about that. But when I came back from it, I just kind of focused in on helping the team out, and I had lost what I felt like a year's worth of conditioning and just kind of being out for a month or so, or however long it was. And it just felt like I had to play catch up. So I just tried to help the team out as best as I can. And, it was just at the start of the year, I thought I was having a great year. And then the injuries came along, and then, the team did what we did, and you're happy about that. But at the same time, like, you wish that maybe the injuries didn't happen so you could be a part of it more,
You hate having a what if. Hey, what could have happened if I wasn't hurt? But you can't torture yourself with that either, man. You had a heck of a year, and certainly lots to look forward to heading into your second professional season. I mean, would you call yourself a goal setter? Are you the kind of guy you're saying, all right, this year I want to do X, Y, and Z?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure every hockey player, professional athlete, does that for himself, whether they actually admit it or not.
Probably right.
You're always working to be the best performance player you can be. And, playing in Newfoundland, it was great and all, but, you want to play AHL, eventually NHL, whatever your goal may be. So you're working towards that, and, things happen along the way that either help you out or kind of set you back, and you just kind of have to roll with it.
Well, you sure do. Well, Colt, it's been a pleasure getting to know you here in this season in St. John's. And I mean, all due respect when I say I hope I never see you again. I hope it's all onward and upward for you, and maybe we'll meet soon one day at the NHL together.
Hopefully.
Hope so. Colt Conrad of your Newfoundland Growlers, sir, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And folks, that's it. That's going to do it for the first ever season of Growler Hour. I'm going to get a lot of thank yous out here because straight up, this has been such a cool project to emerge from the crazy situation that has been this pandemic. We started off with a Twitch stream to make up for our home schedule, and we ended up producing a full-fledged television show out of this. So it's been a wild ride these last few weeks and months, and there's certainly a lot of people who have had their hands in this that deserve some recognition before we sign off for the final time this year. First and foremost, all of you who watched this. It's the only reason we do this. We don't do this for ourselves. We do this for you. And we're so thankful that you guys chose to spend parts of your Thursdays and your Saturdays and your Sunday mornings here with us. Honestly, that's all we could ever ask of you. And we thank you for your support. Thank you for being a fan. And just thank you for supporting the Growlers. I also want to thank you all for giving Twitch a shot. It's a new platform. I know it's a little different than maybe what we're used to. We're all used to Facebook and YouTube, but this is new and it's different and something we're really excited about internally. And we thank you for coming along on this journey with us as we learn this new platform that we are really excited about using and honing and really getting a lot out of moving forward. So please stick with us here on Twitch. Keep following us throughout the summer on social media. This might be the end of the show for now, but it's not going to be the end of Growler Hour forever. We're really going to do a lot of different content. Make sure you stick around for that. Thank you to all of our special guests. Tonight, Colt Conrad was excellent. Laurence Gilman, always great to chat with him. Dozens of guys who owed us nothing, who came and gave us their time for you guys, to entertain you guys during this crazy pandemic time. So I'm so thankful for each and every person who came on to spend what ended up being hours and hours of time with us. Really appreciative of everybody who gave up their time. Thank you to my co-creators. Growler Hour was created by myself, John Long, and Kenny O'Leary. Those two are the real brains. I'm just the great voice behind this whole thing. This show would not exist if it wasn't for these guys, so I'm super thankful to the boys for help keeping this project afloat. And to that same point, thank you to all of the Growlers staff and senior management for believing in us and giving us the freedom to produce a kooky show like this and on the internet. So that's Dean McDonald and Glenn Stanford and Trevor Murphy, T-Dog in particular. Thanks to all of you for believing in us and making this possible. And folks, and I mean this when I say I really started lately really itching to get back, really starting to miss hockey. And whenever it's the right time to do so, I can't wait to see you all back at Mile One Center for the upcoming season. And please, like I said, stay connected with us. We want to hear from you guys. We're excited to come back whenever that may be taking place. And we have the best, you guys are the best fans of the ECHL, and we really need your support, and we look forward to having you back at Mile One Center really soon. So with all that, let's sum it all up. I'd like to end our season off with this. You know, we've been through a lot of challenging times as a society over the last few months. It hasn't been easy. We've already overcome a lot of this together, but there's still maybe some challenging times ahead. So please don't forget, be safe, be kind to each other, be kind to yourself, exercise patience, exercise grace, be open-minded, challenge yourself, and challenge others. So on behalf of the Growlers, folks, I'm Chris Ballard. This has been Growler Hour. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you soon.